Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And we are back with another episode of Joe on Joe Illustrated. Today we're talking about G.I. Joe issue number 80. This is like a perfect example of a one-and-done comic book for G.I. Joe fans. This issue is just fantastic, and I can't wait to talk about it. Before we do, first we're going to hear a word from our wonderful sponsor, the Movies and a Meal podcast.
Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben. And each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show.
Aren't they swell? And while you're on the internet, guys, subscribing to the Movies and a Meal podcast, I want you to say hi to Joe on Joe at Joe on Joe Pod. That is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. You new listener or no listener? Did you maybe you first encountered me on JoeFan82's live stream? Because that's what we did this week, guys. Please, if you're in earshot, check out JoeFan82, his live stream. I had the pleasure of being his guest on Sunday night. The episode is up. You can have it. You find him on Twitter. I believe his handle is actually at GI Joe Fan 82. But he's great, and he's a huge Joe fan. It's my second time on a show. Last time was like 4 years ago, which we both laughed at because the years are absolutely flying by. But we had a really good in-depth discussion. You get to see my beautiful face, tongue-in-cheek, on his camera live stream on his YouTube channel, I believe. So check out JoeFan82. He's pretty great, and I had a lot of fun. We talked all about G.I. Joe. We talked about old school, how I got into it, modern thoughts on modern comics, certainly modern G.I. Joe stuff. Like it was pretty wide ranging. I could have gone for another hour. I know he could have gone for another hour. So I was very happy to do it, and I can't wait to be back on to talk even more G.I. Joe. So today we are talking about G.I. Joe number 80, and this was from 1988 in the summer, where they were running 2 issues a month. So it was running bi-weekly. And so last week we did the You Were Sayings for the comics that were on stands. So this week,
You were saying?
For what movies were in the theaters. Now, we're using the on sale date. So this technically is, we're looking at late November. But I need to change this. I'm just going to break down and say this. I think what I might do is it's just a little more clerical work on my side, but I might take a break from doing any movies for a few months until we catch up. I'm going to do this today, but then I think I might take a break. And then when we get caught up to what the actual, would be December of 88 movie was, with the actual issue that was actually on the stands during December of 88, because listeners, if you don't know, comic books used to have, they would have dates on the cover, but they were called newsstand dates, and they were called on sale, like on sale dates. And what they were was for the newsstand distributor or the comic book dealer to remove these from the stand. So actually, specifically, let me correct myself. They were specifically for the newsstand person. The comic book shop would keep them on sale forever. They were telling the newsstand person for the spinner racks and the 7-Elevens of the world, in late November, you need to pull this comic book off the rack. That's what the date on the cover means. And I covered this before on the show. Apologies for going over it again. So a lot of websites easily, very easily, not pointing any fingers, use that date as the publishing date because it is an easy standard way to lump everyone together. If you have a November on sale date, then that's when it is, because that's also the indicia date on the inside of the book too. So all the markings on these old comic books, and I'm talking, this goes back to the 60s and the 50s, and I'm not sure exactly when they started putting the dates on there, but it goes back forever. It'd be interesting. The one thing, maybe I'll try to figure out when they stopped doing that with the actual like remove date, because they're not on newsstands, and it's rare that you're in a spinner rack anymore. So there's a synchronicity. So while these say late November of 88, this actually was on sale, would have been November, October, September, August, probably in August of 88. But I'll do a little math. I believe it is a 3-month window. I'll do a little math, and we'll course correct going forward, because I've only done 80 of these and knowingly doing them incorrect as far as matching the movies with the comics. So hey, I'll get to it. So here we go. November of 88. My brain is addled and rattled. I thought we talked about Alienation already, but here it is, showing up on the list of no, that was a scroll issue. Here we go. All right, November of 88. We're back and on track, everybody. Appreciate you, Chicago. November 4th, 3 pretty good movies. So first one, Everybody's All American, which is Jessica Lange, Dennis Quaid, Timothy Hutton. Definitely hits for someone like myself who played football in high school and went on, and you go from being something to being something different. That's really the message there. When your life shifts underneath you, how fast can you pivot? And this is about someone who had a quote, a really great high school football career, and they go back to it. It's been a few years since I watched it, but I remember loving it. Jessica Lange, Dennis Quaid, Timothy Hutton, John Goodman. Oh, I forgot John Goodman was in this movie, but it's really good. It resonates as an adult. I do believe I saw it when I was a kid, because it's like, oh, hey, a football movie, and not great as like for kids. But I'll tell you what, the next big movie that as a child I loved, because I was a kid of the 80s, man. I loved me some U2. Rattle and Hum dropped on November the 4th. Now, I'm gonna put it out there, guys. I know U2, people like to use U2 as a punching bag. I get it, and certainly they've become a bit of a parody of themselves. I can't really remember the last time I listened to one of their newer albums and enjoyed it. This is after 40 years of making records, so I'm not going to fault them for that. U2 in the 80s cannot be denied. One of the absolute top 3 acts of the entire, their musical output in the 80s and early 90s is just phenomenal. And you could say it's pretentious, say it whatever it is. They grew from that like kind of post-punk style they had in the 70s into this, they wore the cloak of U.S. rhythm and blues. Certainly in this movie, this is them putting on the clothes of an American blues band. And then they put on the cloak in the early 90s. They put on the club aesthetic and all that stuff. There is like a 10-year run of U2 that just can't be denied. And I'm sorry, I know people love to make fun of Bono and all his the pretension and the whatever, what have you. I'm a U2 stan from way, 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 way back. Sure, I'll never put on anything that they've put out in the last probably 20 years. But this old stuff, they're bangers from back in the day. And I remember seeing Rattle and Hum in the theaters and just being blown away by it. I just loved it. Loved everything about it. I couldn't have been further from Bono, and all I wanted to do was be Bono. I used to practice his how he would like bend at the waist and just sway and swing, and I was just fantastic. It's awesome. So 13-year-old me, absolutely being in love with Rattle and Hum. I thought it was fabulous. The other movie that older me fell in love with, and sadly, it has never gone out of flavor because it has never been more relevant than the last few 4 or 5 years. The movie They Live by friend of the show, John Carpenter. I say that because you guys know every Halloween over at Golden Apple Comics, we do a John Carpenter signing. And John and his wife, Sandy King Carpenter, are two of the nicest people we've met out here. They're very gracious with their time, very giving. They love their fans. They love doing these annual Halloween signings at Golden Apple. So I'm a John Carpenter stan from back in the day. When I first met John, I was like, strangely, and I didn't put this together until we started doing these signings and I really looked at John's catalog. His movies were, for me, a real connection to my father. Because my dad loved these movies, and my dad doesn't know anything. He doesn't follow film like that. I don't know that he knew they were all directed by John Carpenter, but he loved They Live. We used to watch They Live together. Escape from New York, anytime Escape from New York was on, me and my dad were sitting next to each other watching it all the time. And The Thing too. I remember seeing The Thing with my dad. And then strangely enough, my mom's favorite movie was Halloween. Like her favorite scary movies, as far as scary movies go. She freaking loved Halloween. To this day, we watch Halloween together. So it's like there's this weird parental-child relationship that we connect to through these classic John Carpenter movies. It's so crazy, even though I don't think they're overly sentimental at all in any way. They were just awesome. And the other one was, of course, Big Trouble in Little China. My dad used to love watching Big Trouble in Little China, and we would totally watch it together. So for me, just a little personal story, when I got a chance to meet Mr. Carpenter and I shared that with him, it was a real revelation for me at the time. I was like, yeah, really, these have really connected me to my dad, because he knows all these movies. My dad, God bless him, he doesn't care anything. He barely, I asked him if he had seen Call the Wild. My dad's an outdoorsman kind of guy. He barely remembered seeing it. And then after I reminded him what it was, he was like, oh yeah, I really loved it. I'm like, well, you barely remembered seeing it. But he loved it. So like, that's his brain. And then to think that we were bonding over these movies and they were all by John Carpenter, I just think is always it's a cool coincidence. The next movie, November 9th, is Child's Play. Set in Chicago, represent. Really great movie. The last time you guys watched Child's Play, it's really great, especially like horror slasher stuff. A lot of the the sequels get crazy, but this one really was played serious, and the concept of what if one of those my buddies came to life. Child's Play is great. Child's Play is a great movie. Now, speaking of great movies, on November 11th, Ernest Saves Christmas. I know I've seen it. I don't remember what anything it's about, but Jim Varney, Ernest Saves Christmas. What else are you going to say? I'll tell you what else you're going to say. Iron Eagle 2, Chappie Sinclair returns, even though you thought he died in Iron Eagle 1. Chappie Sinclair is back. He does not bring with him, Jason Gedrick does show up. Oh, hold on. He's in the cast. I don't think he's the lead of the movie, but Chappie Sinclair returns in Iron Eagle 2. And I think is Iron Eagle 3 called like Aces High or something like that. I don't know. November 17th, Cherry 2000 with Melanie Griffith as like a futuristic sex robot, if memory serves what that one was. Yeah, I think that's what it was. She was like a future sex robot, and then there was a crime they had to solve. I have not seen that in a long time, but I remember it being on HBO a ton when I was a kid. And of course, I was I'm a big fan of Melanie Griffith, so I was like, hey, you're a future sex robot. I'm a 13-year-old kid who's terrible. So, on November 18th, The Land Before Time. This was a big movie, and this movie launched a bunch of sequels. Dinosaurs, they're facing extinction. And, they would go on to face extinction in 5 more sequels. Also, interestingly, on the same day, so that was, so that Land Before Time, that was a Don Bluth movie, of course. That came from, it looks like Universal or something. But it looks like Disney put out Oliver and Company on the same day. So they were competing for those kids' dollars. That's kind of cool. And on the 23rd, well, Cocoon the Return, sequel to Cocoon. Cocoon was a huge movie. Do not underestimate the power of the movie Cocoon, because it was huge. So a sequel to Cocoon would have been pretty big. I don't think it's considered as good as the first one. The first one is considered really still, it holds up. I don't think Return kind of held the geriatric punch that the first one did. But the other big one on November 23rd is, of course, Scrooged, directed by Richard Donner, with Bill Murray, Karen Allen, etc. Bobcat Goldthwait. You guys know Scrooged. It's a perennial classic and an absolute favorite Christmas film for anyone who has seen it. So that is it for
You Were Saying.
And now, let's get into this. G.I. Joe number 80. We're going to start with this fabulous cover. Hold on.
Now, mass is ready.
And we've got the Rolling Thunder along with the was it the X-19, the stealth plane, blazing. Not much of a backdrop on this, and I think that hurts. So this cover is great, and it's fun, and it's got a lot of movement and action to it. But I'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like someone zoomed in on something bigger. And if you get a chance to look at it, you might see what I'm talking about. Where the background, the marks, which I guess are supposed to be like cliff walls, because this is the issue where a random island pops up near Cobra Island, and the Joes try to secure it before Cobra does. So it's trying to denote like a cliff face. But it just seems, the backgrounds seem so, at a difference, the pencil, or the, I guess, ink marks, seem at a different scale than the refinements on the toys, figures, but yes, it's toys, and this whole issue is very toyetic. We're going to talk about that. It feels like if this were something that someone zoomed in on, like there was a bigger picture, and they blew it up to fit, like they blew up this picture of the toys, and then someone else filled in the background. I think maybe that's what I'm seeing here. So there's definitely something off about this. For sure, the difference between the ground and the quote-unquote sky or wall that's behind these two is absolutely only denoted by color. No one drew this background. No one said, here's where the cliffside. So it's not a drawn background. So I would not be surprised if this was taking, I don't know who did it, because it's credited to Ron Wagner, Bob and Cloud. It's taking these two images. Today would have been done in Photoshop. Definitely wouldn't have been done in Photoshop back then. And taking these two detailed images and of the machines, which look great, and like adjusting them to fit this cover, and then just drawing a background to match it, if that makes sense. If you guys look at it, that's going to make a lot more sense probably than my explanation did, or at least if you see it, you'll be like, oh, I see exactly what Joe's saying. Because they both look really good. It's just something's off as far as the final product. Having said that, it is a perfect representation of what happens in this book. There are two vehicles involved, and the dudes, although Flint's drawn in this and Flint's not in it, and it looks like Muskrat, and Muskrat's there. Looks like they're drawing the SWAT guy, and I don't think he's on the team. What's his name? SWAT guy, the SWAT team member guy. I'm blanking on his name. Where's the baseball hat? Yeah. So it looks like there's a couple different Joes in position on the vehicle. But having said all that, it's absolutely representational of what's in the comic.
Yo, Joe!
Rolling Thunder is the name of the issue, and it does not disappoint. Script by Larry Hama, breakdowns Ron Wagner, finishes Tom Palmer, coloring Bob Sharon, lettering Jim Novak, editor Bobby Chase, in chief Tom DeFalco. Man, this Ron Wagner, Tom Palmer combo cannot be topped. Guys, if you don't know Tom Palmer, legendary inker, his son Tom Palmer Jr., also a very talented legendary inker. Tom Palmer inked a ton of stuff. I think, if my brain is serving me right, I think Tom Palmer like inked the Kree Skrull War with Neil Adams. During this era, he would have been on the Avengers as well, or was about to be on the Avengers. Tom Palmer's inked a ton of stuff, and he's got this really nice, from, you know, in my eyes, this nice, like, it's like an organic feel. All of his characters feel real's not the right word that I'm searching for, but an organic might be a little too generic. They just, Tom Palmer inks give it, there's a softness to it. Yeah, that's it. There's a softness to it, to his human, you know, his human figures, where their their skin moves, you know what I mean? Their clothes are real cloth. That kind of definition is what I'm talking about. Certainly he's great with vehicles too, as you'll see in this issue. There's a lot of vehicle play going on in this issue, but between Tom Palmer and Ron Wagner, I mean, this really is a good looking book, and it's good looking in that G.I. Joe pocket that I like, that realistic enough look to a comic where it's not like you could almost see all this Ron Wagner stuff. You could almost always see him as storyboards, you know, storyboards to a movie, or a comic adaptation of a movie, you know, where they want to get it as real to the movie as you're watching. They don't play around with a ton of comic book tropes or comic book, you know, cheats or anything, you know what I'm saying? As far as like, you know, telling on the page, it's like they set up a camera and this is the action that the camera caught. And I love that for G.I. Joe. Yeah, every book has a different feel and a different need, right? So some books that are more fantastical, like X-Men, may not thrive in that regard. They may require a little bit more comic booky look to it, things like that. So for me, my money, this is great. And this page jumps right into it. This is a one and done issue. It is solid. It gives you all the people that you need to know, tells you everyone who's in it, tells you everything you need to know about the issue. This is a perfect example of what a great singular comic book should be. It starts in the middle of the action, all of it. It's great. So what we start with here is the Joes in a C-130 and Cobra in one of their helicopters circling this new island, you know, and they explain it that the marine geologists were right. There's a new island rising out of the Gulf and smack dab in Cobra Island's backyard. So it tells us, one, you know, what we're looking at, because it is kind of just a lot of volcanic activity in the middle of the water. But it also tells us where Cobra Island is. Then we get explained that's why the Cobra helicopter is on the scene. They don't want anyone else laying claim to this rock. So anyone else laying claim, so that tells us why G.I. Joe's there. They're there to lay claim on this rock. And it even gives us the origin. This isn't just out of nowhere. They say it's amazing to see something that big shake so much. This has to be a result of the fault line explosion that created Cobra Island, with a asterisk hashtag to G.I. Joe issues 40 and 41. So it's everything I love in a comic book. You got all the exposition. Someone can pick this up, understand exactly what's happening, and there is a reference to an older issue that if they're so inclined, they really dig this, they can be like, man, well, I got to get my hands, because this is pretty interesting, on 40 and 41 and see how did Cobra build an island?
Yo, Joe!
And that's what I'm saying. We talked about this on Joe Fan 82's show. That's what I'm saying is needed in comic books. Absolutely give you enough to enjoy this issue, but it's okay to tease previous adventures. It's okay to tell readers where else they can find those adventures. That's the job of the comic book. That's the language of the comic book. So now in this page, we're the cameras, the story and camera is taking us into the C-130, and we're seeing who exactly is involved in this. And this is where we get This whole issue is an introduction to a new wave of Joes, a new wave of action figures, a new wave of vehicles, a new wave of everything, but all told with really great character stuff. Every Joe character is absolutely defined by characteristics and personalities throughout. We got Outback, who's certainly a returning member. Wild Bill's flying the C-130, of course. And we even get Ripcord, who's a classic, the one of the absolute classics. And he says, we better go back and brief the new Joes. So now he's telling the reader, okay, it's not just new to me. It's also new to everyone who's reading this comic. And we've got Charbroil back there, Hardball, Muskrat, and Hit and Run. And they're in the back of the C-130 and it's great. I like all 4 of these dudes. Muskrat always reminded me of like they were doing a prototype Snake Eyes, like they started to design what Snake Eyes would look like when he was fighting in Vietnam, and then they decided to not do that character, so they just call him Muskrat. Hit and Run, I think, is a dope character. He's got so many accessories as a figure, especially for that time. Hit and Run is great. Charbroil, cool. I don't feel like we've explored the world of Blowtorch. I love me some Blowtorch, but it's always good to have a new, and he's got a cool costume. It's always good to have a new fire guy, but I still want to explore Blowtorch. I feel like we've never really given him his due. And Hardball, the baseball playing, in the veins of the Captain Gridirons of the world. Hardball's okay. He comes. What I like about Hardball is he's got a great gun. Like that lobs the I guess it'd be grenades or just explosive shells. So those are the new guys, and we get a nice panel that introduces them all. And even in the panel, you get characterization stuff. Muskrat is literally sleeping, so he's chill. You got Hit and Run, who's doing push-ups because he's like not OCD, maybe OCD is the right word, but he's on attention, like he's raring ready to go. Hardball is this very, very sportsy, team player, like hitting Charbroil on the shoulder, like we're a team. So he's very much that team guy. And well, I guess there's not a ton of character on Charbroil, but come on, I'm not gonna fault it for that. He's just sitting there minding his own business. And maybe that's his characterization, that he takes it a little too. You know what? That is exactly what it is, because Hardball says, "Hope you got a new flint in your flamethrower," and his reaction is, "The ignition system is electrical, Hardball." So maybe he takes himself too seriously. So I take that back. There's a ton of characterization on this panel. I love it.
Yo, Joe!
And that's really what this issue is, man. It's an exploration of action figures fighting over a MacGuffin that by the time you get to the end, the MacGuffin actually goes away, which is also a smart commentary on the nature of war and what you're fighting for and all that stuff. So this page is, next one is, we get kind of see the Cobra side of this, right? So we had one page checking in with the G.I. Joes on their plane. Now we're seeing the Cobras on their helicopter, and it's Mindbender and Firefly. A great piece of continuity here, where Firefly, who we haven't really seen in quite a while, saying, "Don't be such a wimp, Dr. Miner. This is my big chance to get back in the good graces of Cobra Commander." So he's been on the outs for a while, because remember, actually, I'm trying to think the last time we saw him, but I know it's been quite a while. He doesn't know that it's Cobra Fred Mander, of course, and we see their perspective, which is pretty much the same perspective as G.I. Joe, which is, why haven't you secured that island yet? And he's Cobra Commander is saying that he's got helicopters ferrying in an armored squadron to garrison the island, and he wants it secured before the Joes arrive.
Yo, Joe!
Now, separate from those two groups of people circling the island, above it we've got Ghost Rider in the Phantom, the stealth jet. And this is great. He's been used a lot in the last few issues. This is fantastic. And they never let the moment to go by where people forget his name. In this case, it's Wild Bill. But he's, flying above and letting he's reconnoitering the area. So he's filling in the rest of the Joe team on what's going on kind of from above. And their backup is Well, we don't know exactly what the backup is yet, but inside Wild Bill's C-130, they're asking about the backup. We find out later that it's, like heavy equipment. It's the what is it? The what's on the cover? What did we just say? Rolling Thunder. Yeah, it's the Rolling Thunder. But right now, they just need to get boots on the ground so that it's at the very minimum, it's a contested situation. Because if they allow Cobra to land and kind of get bunkered in, then it's Joe's assaulting someone who's already in place. So these guys got to get going, and that's why Ripcord's leading the way here. So Wild Bill is bringing him in. The jump master gives them the green light, and Rip asks if anybody's not up for this, they'd better speak up now, and everyone gives him the thumbs up.
Yo, Joe!
Look, Mom, no wires. You can get yourself a Freedom Stick, a wireless video game controller. It's compatible with the Nintendo, Sega, Atari, Commodore systems. Wow, that is huge. A wireless controller. Did anyone from C America? Is that like Capcom America, or what is C America or Comerica? Has anyone here ever gotten this? It looks like it's a straight Nintendo ad, but it's not. It's modeled very much like a Nintendo pad, but apparently it works with, Atari, Commodore, Nintendo, Sega. They don't really go in detail, so it must have had a receiver, like an infrared, that you plugged into. I never use this. Does anyone in the audience use a Freedom Stick? Let me know. So as the Joes open up for a roof, so this whole issue flops basically page to page to page. So let's check on the Joes. They're doing something. Cobra's going to counter. Cobra's going to do something. The Joes have to counter to that. So in this case, the Joes see that the C-130's door is opening, so that they know they're going to jump. So the Cobras are not ready yet for a jump because they're in a helicopter, and there's too many thermals that are coming from this erupting volcanic hot island. So that's screwing up the airflow for the helicopter. So they can't get very close to it and hover. That's why they've had to circle this whole time. They're in a helicopter. They should have been able to just go and land, but they can't do it. So who gets this great idea? Oh, it's Firefly, which is a great idea. There's Cobra troopers on board, and there's a whole squadron of bats, battle android troopers. And he just kicks all the bats off, and they land, and sure enough, they break. But what we know about bats is they keep fighting even when they're broken.
Yo, Joe!
Oh, and here you go. Ladies and gentlemen, you could have gotten yourself free with proofs of purchase. An M&M's painter's cap. Also available, an M&M's custom designed shirt. Now, the shirt's going to cost you $7.95 with 2 proofs of purchase. But this painter's cap, this is free, one size fits. Remember, man, painter's caps. I don't care if you were or were not painting. You were ready to play. You were like, I'm serious about having a good time when I'm wearing my painter's cap. I'm not just doing a Bananarama video. I'm here to play, and I'm wearing some sweet, sweet M&M swag. So come get it. Now, the Joes jump out in their parachutes, and as they're falling, the bats, whose legs are very visibly broken in these drawings, it's really nice, they're just shooting at the Joes, which is the advantage of having a battle android trooper. However, that doesn't stop Hardball from lobbing a bunch of I guess grenades, at them from above, and blows them off the island. So now the bats are not the eminent domain. You know what I mean? The Joes now have landed on top of this mountain, and that doesn't sit well with Cobra.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Outback yells to take some cover as the helicopter comes back in, but Charbroil does not take cover. He just stands still in the middle of the firefight as the chopper. And remember, this is that it's that Cobra, that big blocky Cobra transport chopper that they never made a toy of that they totally should have. He just engulfs it with what I'm assuming is napalm, and that's great. Like he takes down this helicopter all by his lonesome. The rendering on this is really nice. If you look at the pacing on the page is really good. First we get a shot with the group, and we see that the chopper's in a distance. Then you get a close up of Outback, and he's turning the way they draw him. So he's craning his head, right? So that tells you that it's coming from behind them, right? Or, not, it's coming from the direction we can't see. And because now we can no longer see the helicopter, that trains you, the reader, to know that he's talking about the thing that you no longer can see in this picture, right? Imagine, just throwing this out there, if that they still drew the helicopter in the background so that they drew it where he was yelling at the Joes. You would think then, language-wise, artistic language, that chopper is actually on the Joe's side because he's yelling when he's talking about here they come. He would actually be referencing something else, but it's not, because the chopper leaves the image. We know in our reptile brain, we know that he's talking about the thing that's no longer in this picture, which then returns in the next panel, and now it's shooting at him. So obviously we know he's talking about the helicopter. But it's really smart. And it's really small details like this, I think, that make a really good, strong storyteller when it comes to comic books. Then you get this great, charbroil scene, and the dudes flying. I think are they a Techno Viper? I forget. Whoever's flying the helicopter, they're just dead, man. They're literally flamed. They're flambéed. The fire actually has gone through the cockpit. It's not just surrounding it. It is inside the cockpit with them, at least from this picture. It appears to be inside the cockpit. And they say, now we know why they call you Charbroil. Yo, Joe! Some more Columbia House 12 hot hits for a cool penny. And the helicopter crashes, and smartly, storytelling-wise, it crashes in the water, so it puts that immediate danger, the fire out, but obviously it's crashed. So now they can't get back up in the air, but now Cobra's on the ground, so now they have to march their way up this mountain. And they get the Televiper has a message from Cobra Commander, and this is a cool thing that they did on the cartoon a ton, and they have not really done it a lot in the comic book, and I'm here for it. They use their gun as a television, I guess it wasn't a gun, but it always was a camera. But they use it to relay a video. I remember that they did that on the Sunbow. It was like in the battlefield to show a screen to someone to then have Destro or Cobra Commander scream at someone about something. And they're doing that here. It's great. And we get Cobra Fredmander saying that he's sent out another squadron of helicopters and more bats. And Mindbender is kind of delaying. I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, we're going to be great. Yeah, we're going to be good. And they know that they're in trouble, so they have to march their way up not silently, but march solitarily, I should say, up the side of this brand new mountain. Yo, Joe! So Wild Bill calls into Lift Ticket. The Lift Ticket's on his way with the backup. And he's confirming that all the jumpers are on the ground, and Lift Ticket on the Tomahawk, which I love that. I love that Tomahawk. He's got Rumbler, the driver, Rumbler, and Duke, and they're in the Rolling Thunder. But it's so big that it's actually slowing the transport capabilities of Lift Ticket and the Tomahawk. I like that very small detail. It explains why it's not there in the first place, because the Joes, are normally very, very organized. And, like they would have timed it. They would have had their heavy weapons landing at the same time as their parachutists and stuff. But they knew it was an urgent, so they sent the parachutists ahead, things like that. To add that detail here to say that this Rolling Thunder is so massive, it's slowing up the whole operation. There's a very cool detail story-wise. And we get here that the cables are holding fine, except when a bunch of Mambas come attack them and start shooting up Lift Ticket. And that Lift Ticket can't really do a lot of evasive maneuvers because the weight of the Rolling Thunder. Yo, Joe! And in comes Ghost Rider, and he scratches two Mambas. He takes them out pretty much, and they show it in one pass. That's really cool. And again, we get the joke of, hey, it's old what's his name, and that's coming from Rumbler. Really nice. I love that they're using him a lot. They're just this stealth plane is just saving the day so much in the last 4 or 5 issues. It's really, really great. See a lot of nice detail on the bullet holes on the Tomahawk. That's really cool. Yo, Joe! Nice 2-page Konami spread. They're advertising their games. And what do we got here? We got Russian attack. You guys remember this ad, of course. It's all the verbs that you do in all of these specific games take up half the 2-page spread, and then the bottom half are images from the games. You got Russian attack, track and field, Top Gun, Castlevania, Double Dribble. Man, I love Double Dribble. Play the hell out of that. Stinger, Goonies 2, and Gradius. I played more Goonies 2 than maybe any other NES game back in the day. Like, I loved Goonies 2, and it was so crazy because I thought it was this. I was always on the lookout for Goonies 1. You know, now obviously they called it 2 because it was a sequel to the movie, not necessarily the game. But you try telling 12-year-old, 13-year-old Joe that, I didn't understand it. I loved it. It was deep. There was like role playing kind of, like there was like you had to find stuff and save stuff. It was a step up from the Indiana Jones Atari game that was trying to do similar stuff too, where you had to get the whip and get the hat and do all that stuff. If you loved Goonies 2, please reach out and let me know. I played the hell out of Goonies 2. It's such a good game. I played a lot of Castlevania too. Played a ton of Top Gun. I'll take that back. I might have played more Top Gun. I did master landing. I was pretty good at landing, at least to a certain point. Eventually it got too hard. But I did play a lot of Top Gun. But man, I loved me some Goonies too. That's for sure. So now we get into a traditional firefight. And as Obi-Wan said, I have the high ground, Anakin. Don't even try it. And the Joes are just, picking off Cobra. The one fun thing about this issue is Hit and Run is drawn he looks like a goblin, because they definitely don't scrimp on his camouflage paint, his face paint. They don't hide from it. So he basically has green skin the entire issue until, strangely enough, you get to the very last page. I think it's a coloring error, but he looks like a goblin. He doesn't necessarily look like a dude with face paint on. On the next page, you see a little bit more detail, but on this page specifically, he just looks like a green dude who's fighting Cobra, like Marvin the Martian joined the Joes. Again, I like Hit and Run a lot. But I'll say this, Hit and Run, this isn't a place for green camouflage. He actually kind of stands out quite a bit on this brown, brown location. But as the Joes are fighting off these, small arms Cobras, a whole bunch of the Cobra artillery finally is starting to arrive, and it's full of like bugs and maggots. And so they're about to be outnumbered very quickly.
Yo, Joe!
And the bugs get dropped in the water. The maggots get dropped on a little land atoll right outside the island, and they start making their way up. Now the Joes, picture it, they're on top of a mesa, right? So they're very elevated, and it's a small island. So these maggots are elevating their guns to shoot the Joes on top, and they're firing artillery shells, right? So artillery goes up, and then it goes in an arc and comes down, right? That's what they're designed to do. So Outback is freaking out about it, but very just awesome. And this is great. And this matches the character that he was showing earlier of like just doing push-ups, getting ready. He's a professional. Hit and Run is like, they can't hit us. It's trigonomic, say this 5 times fast, trigonometrically impossible. And it's funny, Outback says, trigger what? Explain yourself. He says, artillery is the science of calculating angles and trajectories.
Yo, Joe!
Artillery rounds are lobbed at high angles to fall down on their targets. At close range, they'll have to elevate their guns to the highest angle, which on a maggot is about 80 degrees, and he knows by looking at this, not quite high enough to drop those rounds on our heads. So all that's happening is they're overshooting the entire mountain. So they're too close to actually hit them, what you would consider properly hit them with the artillery. And that's great. I love that he knows that. He knows what the angle is on their guns. So he knows that as they try to hit them, they're not going to be able to do it. It's really, really great. And Mindbender has to answer to Cobra Commander once again. But this is cool because it's all shown very visually too. It's not just explained by Hit and Run. You see them set up, you see them fire, and then it's really easy to understand that they're just too close, and they're all their shells go over and they land in the water. It's a well done sequence, whether or not you read the captions too, which makes a good comic book.
Yo, Joe!
So now Firefly, she just tells them to correct elevation to fire flat at the lip of the cliff. So they're just going to blow the cliff away, which does make a lot of sense. I kind of, when I read this, I was first like really impressed with Hit and Run, and then I got to this page and I went, yeah, Hit and Run, like, you're so confident, but they're just going to hit the cliff. Now, I'll say this, perhaps the maybe some of the detonations of the artillery wouldn't go off because maybe the fuses wouldn't have had chance to to arm themselves, things like that, because they're not technically going up in that parabolic arc, things like that. They don't get into that, but maybe that's a factor. So maybe as they hit the mountain, it's just more of like a concussive explosion on the mountain. Still, though, not good for your health, Hit and Run. And we get Muskrat and Hardball here talking about some really good personality, like mission statements. That's it. It's like the mission statement of this issue. And they touch on it again on the final pages. And so, but we'll say it here. Muskrat, who again, I really think might have been a proto Snake Eyes. Like if they were like, let's do a pre-face, pre-black costume Snake Eyes, you would have designed Muskrat. And then you would have said, okay, let's not do that. He says, we're going to get blown to smithereens for a worthless pile of rock, Hardball. And Hardball says that may be true, but at least it'll be our pile of worthless rock. Now, keep that in mind, because they kind of touch on it again at the end. And Muskrat says, I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds worth shooting back for, and then they go once again to shooting. Muskrat shooting with a shotgun at Cobra is like 100 yards away. So maybe he might be firing slugs. You never know.
Yo, Joe!
We got into a slug. Yeah, and long story. Once we were hunting once, and we were basically a bunch of us just unloaded at a really, really long distance because we were waiting, and then some deer got spooked, and I think we ended up bagging one of them, but we were waiting, and someone jumped it and started shooting, and the deer kind of were out in the open, and they kind of were stuck. Pardon me if this gets a little graphic for some of you. I personally don't hunt any longer, but I hunted a lot when I was a kid, and the deer didn't know which way to go because we actually had guys on both sides of this field that we were on, and once they were spooked, we knew they weren't getting any closer, and there was a lot of slugs fired that day. I think we got at least one out of that, and the deer probably got quite a surprise that day because it was wild. It was one of those memorable hunting experiences where you're like, did we really just fire like every round that we had available? And my dad's like, yeah, that doesn't happen very often. Just savor it. So anyway, so here we are. The Rolling Thunder is now making its way to the island. I always chuckle when it's comics, so it captures a moment in time, So it's like the Tomahawk reaching the island, and right next to it is drawn the Phantom stealth jet. But if they were really traveling at the same speed, the Phantom would probably be falling into the ocean. But it's like that perfect snapshot moment as it's zooming by, I'm sure going 5 times as fast as Lift Ticket. Anyway, as they get closer, the bugs pop up out of the water and they start shooting at Lift Ticket. And so Lift Ticket loses his fire direction gear, so he can't hit anybody. And if you remember, the stealth jet has this radar trick to it, right? Where it like confuses people's radar, and so that's what we're about to see.
Yo, Joe!
And as these missiles get launched, or it homes in on other people's radars. That's what it does. So by the bugs bouncing their radar off of the Joes, he's able to send his missiles directly in on the radar stream and not miss a thing. And these bugs realize that too late, and they're yelling, turn off the radar. And so they get destroyed by Ghost Rider. And again, another telling jokes the rules of three. They're like, thanks much, good buddy, because they can't remember his name. And now the Rolling Thunder is off and on the ground and ready for action.
Yo, Joe!
And action it finds. This is a cool moment. Lift Ticket says to Rumbler, he's talking, he says, I can't stick around to give you air cover. My tanks are almost dry. I'll be back as soon as I can get gassed up. And Rumbler's just like, nah, you did your job getting us here. Now it's time to do our job. And it's Rumbler and Dukes. There's two dudes in this. But this Rolling Thunder is such... I never had this toy. This toy is awesome. It's got every gun. It is like, let's just say it. If Rob Liefeld designed a G.I. Joe toy, it would have all these guns on it. That's what this toy is. And it is tearing up all of these maggots. It's absolutely doing a great job.
Yo, Joe!
So now the Joes are letting it. So it's finally just Joes versus Cobra on the mountain, like man on man, and then the tanks are fighting it out on the bottom. So it's no longer tank on man action. That's all kind of done. And the Rolling Thunder's doing well. He's scratching all these maggots, knocking them out of the way. They're no longer shooting at the Joes. And Cobra is telling the bugs that they need some help here. The bugs are kind of like they were sitting off at a distance.
Yo, Joe!
And the Rolling Thunder just straight up rolls over the remaining tank to get to a firing position to shoot at the bug. That's great. Like, because he was kind of going to be caught between the bugs and the remaining maggot. He just rolls over the maggot. He does get hit by the bug, but it just scratches it, and then he continues to take out. So one Rolling Thunder equals an entire platoon of maggots and bugs. That's what we're learning today. Very cool. I like it. The battle's going poorly for Cobra, to say the least. And we finally get some more bats into the fray.
Yo, Joe!
And the bats are being dropped behind the Joes. So now the Joes on top of the mountain, they're getting kind of choked off. But as that's happening, the tremors are increasing too. So these bats are actually falling off the mountain. They're not really able to attack the Joes. But Hardball and Ripcord stays up front. Hardball goes and he says, hey, I'm batting 1,000 because he's a baseball player. And he just drops grenades all over these bats that are still on the mountain, and he takes care of them. These are great, just great action drawings. It just like set pieces. And you can really see the toys in them. You could see that this is really a good... You could play this issue, I think we talked about this a little bit last issue too. Like you could play this. You could really set up here's my fake mountain. Here's these Joes. They had a fight. Here's a bunch of Cobras came this way. Here's these two vehicles. They fought over here. You could really play this out, and they do a good job of it. And the characterization of all these new guys absolutely continues.
Yo, Joe!
And now the whole island is sinking. It's literally sinking. It's going back into the ocean from which it birthed. And the Rumbler in the Rumbler in the why I just said the name like 500 times. Why am I I keep wanting to say heavy duty, but what Rolling Thunder? Jeez Louise, guys. He's just running over bats. So he's just mopping up everybody. The water is rising. Mindbender, we learned, can't swim. He and Firefly are trying to make their way out. They're just trying to get out with their lives. Everyone's just getting... It's just the island is collapsing underneath their feet.
Yo, Joe!
And here we go. It takes care of the last of the bats. Which is the Rolling Thunder rolling over a bat. Everyone get on the Rolling Thunder. It doesn't have to float because Lift Ticket showed back up after he got a full tank of gas. Hooks him up with the hook, and they fly off the island. And here we go. There goes the island back under the gulf from whence it came. And someone says, I don't exactly know who, but they say, whence? You've been reading them Thor comics again? And this looks like, you know what? I'll bet you this is Ripcord. No, it's not. Yeah, this is it. It's not Ripcord. It is Hit and Run. But now they don't draw his camouflage. So his camouflage maybe got washed off, which I'm like, if his camouflage gets washed off by a dip in the ocean, that's not very good camouflage makeup. But he says, what a waste. All of that for nothing. And Outback says, you got it right, Hit and Run. It don't mean nothing. And that's kind of it. Like, the statement on this issue, and it goes back to what Hardball and Muskrat were talking about, where that's the mission. Like, we do this. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything, but we have to do it because that's our job. And in this case, blood was spilled and fought over what? A piece of land that now doesn't even matter anymore. That's a heavy message for 22 pages of comic that is just all about action figures shooting each other to no consequence, where no one dies, no one this, like, that's a heavy message, and it's really delivered, softly delivered, really, really well. I enjoy this. I enjoy this issue quite a bit. Over here in the comic book section, the comments section, Postbox the Pit, we've got some letters from G.A. Barnum in Lawndale, California, Mark Turner, out of London, England, Joe Dobrovich from Amarillo, Texas wrote in, Ben Butler from Hamden, Connecticut, and I like this one, Danny, quote, Lone Wolf Edelman out of New York, New York. Danny, Lone Wolf. Throwing out your own nickname there, Danny. I like that a lot. And we got a fun note here. Marvel Editorial, they were down on no prizes this month. From now on, no prizes will be awarded, but the entries must be on a postcard. Any no prizes submitted in letter form will be summarily circular filed 86 and permanently DX'd. This applies only to G.I. Joe related titles, the implication being that you can bombard the rest of the Marvel Universe with no prize entries in any form that you can devise. So, if you guys got a no prize for G.I. Joe, don't even try to send them a letter. You just put it on a postcard. That's all they have time for. That's all we have time for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I do. I'm not fooling. This issue is a blast. If you haven't read G.I. Joe 80 in a long time, give it a look. I think you're going to love it like I love it. And now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.